Note that the zone, that the property is within two zones. The two lots on the west side will be in the R8 zone. The two lots on the east side will be in the R75 zone. This is an image of the previous plat, one large piece of property, a street view looking southeast. From the property, there's an existing home on the current property. Street view looking southwest. This is the proposed site plan, including 4 lots. All of those will be between 8,000 and 9,000 square feet, which will meet the requirements of both the R8 and the R75 zones that all 4 of them are in. Also note that the sidewalk off of 400 West they will put in separated sidewalk, which are required for all new residential subdivisions. However, on the north side, we have some discretion to allow them to have a combined sidewalk to fit in with a combined sidewalk that is already existing for most of the street on 255 South.
Any questions for Mr. Kirby?
Why are there the 2 different zones, the R8 and the R75? Since they all qualify for R8, right?
I believe the intent on the zoning here was to maintain R8 around if you look at the zoning on the map, to maintain R8 around the perimeter of these major streets and allow slightly higher densities on the internal.
So rather than, because it meets both zones, rather than request a zone change, it exceeds the requirements.
Yes, these lots on the 2 lots on the right would be in the R75 zone, and both of those lots are greater than 8,000 square feet, so they'd meet the minimum requirements of having 7,500 square feet.
So it just bypasses a step there. We don't have to deal with it then.
They don't need to rezone these, no. Okay. So the R75, those are minimum lot sizes, so they can't go lower than 7,500 square feet, but if they're over that, even a large amount over that would be their discretion.
Doesn't make any difference, yeah.
So there's not a problem with having a subdivision that spans 2 different zones?
No.
As long as it meets the requirements. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Is the applicant present? Is there anything you'd like to add, or?
If you have any questions,
Could you state your name?
yeah, Brian Sudweeks with Sudweeks Construction.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Sedwigs? Okay, thank you. All right, we'll bring it back to the commission then. Any other questions or comments? In that case, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion then. I move that we approve the preliminary plat of Adjusted Dream, Plat B at 255 South, 400 West in the R8 zone.
Mr. Cochran's made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Iglesias seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 3.3.
All right. Item 3.3 is another preliminary plat. Thumbs up. There we go. Preliminary plat for Blue Light, Plat A, located at 433 North State Street in the C2 zone. This is previously, as you can see, one lot. It's now being proposed to be subdivided into 4 separate lots. You can zoom in a little bit. So many of you are aware this is the old Kmart building. There are 4 lots being proposed. 3 of those lots with frontage on State Street, and then lot 4 with frontage on 400 North. Each of those 4 lots meet the minimum lot size requirements. Also, just as a note, we're requiring as part of this preliminary plat to have the buffered or separated sidewalks along 400 North as part of this preliminary plat approval. That is a requirement from the recent State Street Design Standards update. Oh, that's all we have on that. Any questions?
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Kirkham? Yeah.
No?
So, as long as we talked in the pre-meeting about the 15% versus 10%, so as long as they didn't make any changes to the size of that building could stay where it is.
Correct.
But if they were to substantially change it, then it would it have to move up closer to State Street?
Yes, at this point, once it's been subdivided, if they were to change that building more than 10%, then it would be required to be relocated up to State Street.
Now, they're changing the sidewalk on the south on 400 North, but not along State Street, correct? So the sidewalk's not being set back there at this point in time?
Not at this point in time, no.
Is the sidewalk being set back all along 4th North, along the full length of the property, including the bank, or just from that Lot 4 back?
It's from the State Street right away to the back of the property. It doesn't wrap around the back. It just
Right,
goes
correct. Along
to that back edge.
Okay.
I'm Kathy Olson with Woodbury Corporation. We don't own the bank, so we don't have any way to push the bank into doing anything with their sidewalk, but the intent is that on the property that we own on Lot 4 and the Kmart parcel that we would do the sidewalk.
That's right. Yeah. Sorry, I should have clarified. The bank is not part of it.
And if I can help also, the bank already has sidewalk along its frontage along 400 North. So we're connecting, all it is along the two properties that will be located on 400 North. It used to be one property, now along 400 North, there'll be two properties. So the sidewalk is just along that frontage.
Yeah.
And it's already separated at the bank.
And it's already separated at the bank and already in place. And then there's even a small section of sidewalk over by the Orem Boulevard area that's kind of pointing towards the bank. And now so we have two sidewalks pointing at each other. Now we're just going to finish off that sidewalk in between with this subdivision.
And does that happen on approval? Paul?
Yeah, what we're going to do is along with this plat, we're going to bond for those sidewalk improvements.
Okay. So off-site will be happening.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Olson or for Kristen? Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. Any other comments that anyone would like to make? In that case, we'll go ahead and have a motion, and I'll go ahead and do that. We are the final approving agency, I guess we're the agency.
Or something.
Authority, there we go. The final approving authority. We are not an agency. I would move that we approve the preliminary plat for Blue Light Plat A at 433 North State Street.
I'll second.
Mr. Cochran seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 3.4.
Item 3.4 is a plat amendment. The University Mall Shopping Center LC is vacating Plat A, lots 3 and 5. Second amended and requesting an approval on a final plat. It's in the northwest section of their property at the mall, the University Mall. It's called the NM14 subdivision. This lot is a 10.5 acre lot, and they're proposing to vacate the existing lot and replace it with a 3-lot subdivision in anticipation of future retail buildings going to be located in the northwest section of the lot, creating future tenant spaces. And the recommendation from staff is that this request complies with the ordinance governing the lot and we recommend approval for this final plat. Any questions?
Okay, any questions?
No.
Okay, is the applicant present? Again.
Kathy Olson with Woodbury Corporation.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Olson? Any comments that you'd like to make?
No, we just need to incorporate the Wells Fargo parcel. Now that it's been approved to move into the PD 34 zone, we wanted to move it into this lot.
Okay, great, thank you. I have this as a public hearing. That's correct. Okay, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing and invite anyone who would like to speak to this item to please step to the microphone and state your name and your address. Seeing no one coming to the microphone, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Any further comments or? Okay, then we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. Let's see. I'll make a motion that we approve the vacation of Plat A lots 3 and 5, second amended, and approve the final plat of University Mall NM14 subdivision at 450 East, 1150 South in the PD 34 zone.
Ms. Jeffries has made a motion. I will second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 3.5.
Item 3.5 is a site plan approval for the Lexington Towns requested by D.R. Horton. The Lexington Towns is located in the PD 11 zone, which is a zone that was created several years ago for a multifamily development at this site. Recently, the D.R. Horton requested a zone change on this property, so you've seen this before, you're familiar with this.
Mm-hmm.
And the site plan conforms with the requirements of section 221123, which contains the PD 11 zone. And this will be 142 units on 10.15 acres. There'll be just under 400 parking stalls provided, which is just a few over what's required. You've seen elevations or renderings of these before. I've included one. This is typically part of a site plan approval, but in this case, both the site plan and the ordinance have elevations that govern how this will look, the materials that can be used. And so that's why you've seen this before with the zoning, the ordinance that required these same things. So their specifications that they're building to meet the zoning ordinance that was before you recently and also went before the City Council. Some final numbers on that I recently mentioned. Our recommendation is that you approve the Lexington Towns development as it requires with it meets the requirements of the PD 11 zone. Any questions?
Okay, any questions for Mr. Schneidman? Is the applicant present? Could you give us your name, please?
Marcel Travis with D.R. Horton.
Okay, thank you. Anything you would like to add? Or
No, I don't know if he has the rest of the elevations. The last time we were before you, you guys did recommend a positive recommendation. The elevations have changed since the time that you last saw them. So you probably saw them in your packet, but there were several changes to the elevation to get our rezone. I think it's going to be a great project, and we're excited to get started as soon as possible.
okay, any question?
How soon after, if you get approval, providing that happens?
If I can find an excavator, we'll start next month. There's a shortage of good
So
excavators.
next April, you're thinking is next?
We're up against the time frame, and
Yeah.
we're quite literally desperately searching for excavators. I think I've found one, and Cliff is willing to give me a pre-construction on the 2nd of August, and so we would be rolling out dirt if we can find somebody that can do it for us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, we'll bring it back to the commission if, oh no, this is not a public hearing. This is a site plan approval. If there are no further questions, would anyone like to make a motion?
My turn? Okay. There's no turns, it's just whoever jumps in first is all. I recommend that that we provide a positive recommendation to the Planning Commission to.
We're the final approval.
Oh, that's a final, never mind. I recommend that we approve the Lexington Town's development of 1430 Sand Hill Road in the PD 11 zone.
Mr. Cochran's made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Moulton seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, item 3.6.
Okay, item 3.6 is a plat amendment for the Promenade Place plat. This would be the second amendment at 875 South Geneva Road in the PD 33 zone. As you can see in these two maps, we have previously had two parcels on this property. Those are the two highlighted there. And the applicant has proposed that those two parcels be combined into one for the purpose of simplifying addressing. So the one parcel would have an address, and each of the buildings would have building numbers associated with them. Other than that, the boundaries, property lines all remain the same.
Okay, any questions that anyone has? I think pretty straightforward.
Yeah, seems like the right thing to do.
Yes, this is a public hearing, so we'll go ahead and open a public hearing.
Christina,
And seeing no one here, we'll go ahead and close.
let Christina say something.
We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Bring it back to the commission for a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move that we approve the final plat at Promenade Place. Plat A, second amendment at 875 South Geneva Road.
Ms. Jeffries has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Cochran seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item, I think we're to 3.7 now. Moving right along.
Yeah.
It'll come up one of these times. Okay, so before you is a modification to the affordable senior housing overlay zone for the parking. Right now, there's not specified. It's in the ordinance that doesn't allow in the front yard. Doesn't clearly specify or detail that it has to be in the backyard. So this ordinance specifically allows either an attached garage in the front, or if it's not attached, it needs to be in the rear of the yard. It can be on the side as long as it's screened from the front, but the majority of the parking would need to be in the rear. Any parking then, surface parking with the covered, whether it's a covered, I just lost the train of thought there, carport, I guess, would have to be screened now by a fence. So part of this ordinance is also requiring a wood, vinyl, or masonry fence that would surround the rear yard if the parking is in the rear. So this is our opportunity to, we're having several of these come in. This is a clarification to make sure that the parking is in the rear so the project fits within the residential neighborhood. So any questions that I can address?
This was an effort to correct what we thought we had before.
Right. I mean, we interpret it that way, but it didn't clearly state it in the ordinance, and so this is more of our attempt to clearly outline the fact that the parking needs to be in the rear unless it's a two-car garage or one or two-car garage that's attached to the main structure.
Any other questions?
So rear access is going to be critical to any future development of Ash housing?
So the project's going to have to be wide enough, or the property wide enough to get the project and an access to the parking, yes.
Okay.
Can that access, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Or limit the number of units.
Sure.
So we do have a couple examples. So this is one project here on the left is a project in American Fork, which you can see there's accesses on the top and the bottom, but the parking is all in the back. The other one is a project that we had in Orem submitted recently that hasn't come before you, but you can see Main Street out on the bottom of the screen. They've accessed off the side, and all the parking is in the rear. So it's definitely possible. These are the two projects that we want to see in the future. If we're going to have these, let's have the parking in the back. So the front yard is landscaped, looks like a single-family home. There's only one door visible from the front. So in actuality, it looks like a residential, fits into the neighborhood. So that's the intent.
So are the setbacks set by the zone?
Yes.
In other words, so if you were in the R8, isn't that 8 and 12?
So it would defer to the HS overlay zone, which has specific standards within that. So even though it's an underlying R8 zone, the affordable senior housing zone would be the requirement. So it's the more restrictive. So it's So there's specific setbacks in the zone itself.
But there would be that access could be within the setback. Is it required? Is the setback wide enough to?
So the setback doesn't include the access. It's strictly for the building itself. So you could have a driveway within the setback. You just couldn't have the building within the setback. So it's the setbacks are specifically designed for the building, and now the parking will be required to be in the rear yard.
So in essence, they would have to provide, if they construct under the ash zone, they would have to provide a setback wide enough to allow the access.
Correct. Yep, which is a minimum of probably 16 feet. Yeah.
I have a question whether the access is, or the parking, is on the side or the back. It has to be screened. There has to be a fence.
Right. It can't project farther out than the actual main front that you see along the street. So they could have a garage that would go on the side as long as the main portion that you see from the front, you can't see the garage. So
and these situations where we've got the parking in the rear, there's got to be a fence back there too.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. This would require the fence.
So this American Fork project then would not meet that requirement.
Well, the parking is in the rear, right?
But doesn't it have to be screened?
Well,
it is.
This is just an idea to show the access. This is not a complete ash project, right? The new fence requirement is something new that we're adding to it. Right now, there is no fence requirement, but we're going to say, okay, if you're going to put all 6 in the back, let's at least screen it from the adjoining properties.
From the property that can see it.
Yeah.
I think it's, I guess, just for those, obviously there's nobody here, for those who aren't here and maybe listening or maybe want to read this, it's important to understand that it's 1.5 stalls that's required for each unit. And so in this situation, there is 6 units. I mean, there's 6 parking stalls because there's 4 units.
Right.
And if we want to keep the integrity of the neighborhood that they're in, it doesn't fit. That's why the requirement putting it in the back.
Yeah, what we're finding is that at least the projects that we've had so far, which are 4, all of them have maximized and put 4 units. So we're not really seeing the 2 or the 3 maximizing. So we're anticipating at least 6 parking stalls, which we're here tonight now to say, okay, we're going to have 6. Let's put them in the rear yard.
Right, and most houses don't, except for my house, right? Okay.
We'll always do an exception.
Okay, any other questions?
Question.
Yes.
Jason, could you go back to that example? Yeah. Or not that one, the one before. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the one on the right. Okay. I guess as I've looked at this, the question came to my mind whether we ought to also require that side obscuring fence along the border of the private drive in addition to the parking. Maybe it's I'm not sure we really considered that, but maybe that's something we ought to
Talking
think
along-
about as well. So something along that.
That there?
So if you had somebody that was, just to the right, a regular single-family home, they don't have basically that driveway right up to their property line. Just the thought.
So right now, under the ordinance, there would not be a fence required.
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct.
Not specifically mentioned.
Right.
So maybe, in other words, I'm saying maybe we've got to modify, if you're so inclined, to modify the language a little bit to require that fence along the private drive that accesses the parking as well, if you feel that's appropriate. If not, we can just leave it as is.
I think that'd be appropriate.
I think that makes sense.
That makes sense because obviously if that single family home is there and then they decide they wanted it, then they would have to actually participate in putting in that fence, if not maybe all of them. So I think that we add that.
If I could, if you're going to add that, I would say where would that fence start? From the front of the structure back? So we don't have to go all the way from the road.
Right.
All the way
Right.
back. So just define.
Well, don't we now have in Orem that you can have a certain height fence?
Yeah, it would be from the setback back.
The setback.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. Maybe the fence requirement starts from the front of the structure and goes back.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're talking about a tall fence, and we don't necessarily want that at the road, because that could obscure traffic.
Right.
It's a good idea.
Okay, any other comments or questions? This is a public hearing, so we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. And unless Christina wants to make a comment,
Being the new planner,
we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back. Any other comments or, okay, I will try and make a motion here, if you'll help me. I move that we forward a positive recommendation to the City Council to amend Section 22-12-7 010 of the Orem City Code pertaining to parking requirements in the Affordable Senior Housing Overlay Zone, with the amendment that a fence be required on the side of the property from the front of the, I must have said something wrong, from the front of the building to the back to screen
on the drive.
that parking area along the drive.
Along driveway, yep.
Along the drive.
Okay.
I'll second that.
And do we say something about that the staff will craft the exact language?
They do.
Yes, and that will be crafted by the staff. I'll amend that. Will you amend your second?
I'll amend my second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, item 3.8. Or was that? Yes, item 3.8.
Item 3.8 is a public hearing. The Orem City Development Services Department is requesting that we amend the ordinance. Section 2253 contains our zoning map of the city, and we're requesting a rezone on two properties located at 410 and 430 South Main. We're requesting that these properties be rezoned from C1 to R8. In late 2008, the owners of the property located at 410, 430 South Main sought an amendment to the general plan and a zone change from R8 to C1 in order to allow for an expansion to the number of beds in the existing facility and for an additional facility that they were going to construct. In 2009, the zone change was granted with the owner's assurance that the facility would remain an assisted living facility and not be used as a treatment facility for those with addictions or who pose a threat to the surrounding residential neighborhood. A development agreement was signed to that effect. I'll show that just a little bit later. The city has recently been made aware that the property may have changed hands or somebody is interested in making a new lease on a property, but we've learned that there is interest to change the use on the property potentially, and that potential use could be detox facility for those with an addiction. After reviewing the development agreement that we had with the from 2008 or 2009, and seeing that this development agreement may be lacking necessary language to prevent such a facility, the city's requesting that we rezone this property back to R8, which it originally was. It was R8. It was then requested to go C1. That was granted, and now we're requesting it to go back to R8. Doing so would make the current assisted living facility a legal non-conforming use. So they would be allowed to continue to use that as an assisted living facility with the number of beds that they have. However, new uses that are not permitted in the R8 zone would not be allowed. Here's an image, a street view of the existing assisted living facility there that has 16 beds in that building, and then there's a building just to the south, very similar, that has 16 beds. And here's a view of the development agreement, which you've received a copy of, or should have.
Yeah.
Our recommendation is that the Planning Commission consider the request to approve the ordinance amendment and to rezone from C1 to R8 and provide a positive recommendation to City Council to that effect.
Just as a clarification, what you have on the right there came from the development agreement. That's
yes, this
not something new.
No, this is the development agreement. I just wanted to point out a couple sections. One where it's written, whereas the owner desires to continue operating the assisted living facility on the property and desires to increase the occupancy of the south building to 16 residents. There's language in the development agreement stating that the current owner desires to maintain that as assisted living facility. That was in the development agreement. And then as well, language that states we don't have all the uses that we would not like to see there enumerated, but we did state those that I think you can understand that what we were trying to do, the intent of this development agreement and the intent of allowing the zone change originally, that was the basis of that was that we wouldn't get a use there that would not fit in with the neighborhood. We wanted uses that would fit in with the neighborhood, and with the agreement that it would continue as an assisted living facility, we granted a zone change so they could increase the number of beds slightly. Any other questions? Just to note, as Jason stated earlier, the city has the ability to request a zone change on any property in the city, as would the owner of that property.
Okay. If there are no questions, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. And seeing no one coming to speak to this item, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for a recommendation, a motion.
I can make a recommendation. I will make a motion that we send a positive recommendation to the City Council for amending Section 2253A and the zoning map of Orem City Code by changing the zone on approximately 1 acre from C1 to the R8 zone.
Mr. Moulton has made a motion. I will second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 4.1 has been requested that we continue that item to September 20th. I guess I can do that. So I will move that we continue item 4.1 to the September 20th Planning Commission meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Cochran seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know Carl Eric Danes at all? Seems to be the new owner of that property.
I'm not sure if he's the new owner or if he was the owner, the original owner. I'm not sure that I might have written that wrong. I'm not sure that the ownership has changed hands. It may just be that somebody's requested requesting us a lease from them?
Yeah, it actually did. I looked at the county records, and the property did change ownership in January of this year.
Okay.
Yep.
The next item is the review of the minutes from,
What the date was.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from Planning Commission meeting June 21st, 2017.
I'll second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
David.
Good.
Dave.
And do we have a director's comment?
No, not tonight.
No comments. Did pretty good, didn't we? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Oh,
And you still,
You can still second.
and I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
And there are none opposed.
usually isn't this much fun.
And we got a late start too.
Yeah, we started 10 minutes.
With that many items, you thought for sure.
Well, they were all pretty straightforward. Just we
Well,
need to get this done.
The zone changed. I would have thought.
If somebody had shown up for it, yeah.
And the Lexington people, I thought for sure that was neighbors, but at least just came and made noise. Oh well.
Maybe they're
Yeah. I gotta go visit. I did.
How are you today?
I am great. How are you?
Really great, because we're going home.
Yeah, you're not here all night.